Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepardson at BChad50, and we're running out of DraftKings Daily Trots, or we're running out of baseball, or days left in the season. Whatever it is, we're coming to a close here pretty soon. So not a whole lot of days left if you're still on the baseball grind, but we're going to try to help you out here with a really fun slate we got going on midweek here tonight. We have a Coors Field game. We've got some aces on the mound, but some with some, I don't want to say red flags, but some caution flags maybe. So we'll go ahead and get into starting pitcher here and start off at the top. Zach Greinke, $13,200. He's a minus 240 favorite, 6.5 run total. Just makes a lot of sense that if you're paying up, he's not substantially more than guys like Max Scherzer. And he's been very good as far as, you know, a normal pitcher goes recently. Hasn't been Zach Greinke good. He hasn't been $13,000 good. But if you just want the nice floor, he's got to be your safest bet for a high floor as far as these aces go.
Yeah, I mean, the floors don't get any higher than Greinke. He's basically had one game this year where he's allowed more than 3 earned runs, and he's an innings horse. He's giving you 6 innings literally every start, so 6 or more, I should say. He's not getting the hook at 6 every start, but he's giving you at least that 6 innings, which is unbelievable. It's just remarkable consistency. The talent level's there for a moderately high ceiling. I wouldn't say he has the highest ceiling on the slate, but definitely the highest floor, and it's with a moderate ceiling. And he's my favorite cash games play. I do think I'm inclined to pay down a little bit at pitcher in GPPs, but as far as cash games go, I'll be slotting Greinke in right off the bat.
Yeah, it makes sense. And then right behind him, Max Scherzer, a guy that we'll probably see some cash game ownership tonight, and rightfully so. I mean, he's got great stuff, but this is a guy who's been good recently. Not great. Second half of the season, he's given up. My concern with Greinke, and it's always kind of been a concern, is the fly balls. But over the last 30 days, he's allowing a 47.4% fly ball rate, 1.85 home runs per 9. The walk rate, obviously ridiculously low, as always, 2.2%. But the swing and strike rate, 16.6%. A lot of good, some bad here. So I think with those things considered, you and I were talking earlier, certainly a guy you want to target today, but probably more of a GPP target because he doesn't necessarily have that great floor. And obviously it's a Baltimore lineup that does have some power top to bottom.
Yeah, I do like Scherzer and GPPs tonight. Big strikeout upside. The Orioles strike out a ton against right-handed pitching. And even though they do rank highly in terms of ISO against right-handed pitchers, that's with a designated hitter most of the time. They're in an NL Park tonight. They don't get a DH, and possibly without Adam Jones again. And if they do have Adam Jones, you got to figure that he's at least less than 100%. So this isn't diminished lineup. So that does make me feel more comfortable trotting out Scherzer. He has had huge home run lows in the second half, but I'm not as concerned about this Orioles lineup exploiting that as I would be if he were facing a full-strength Orioles lineup at Camden Yards. So I do like Scherzer a lot in GPPs. Couple other names I'm looking at in GPPs. Rick Porcello. I can't believe I'm saying it. I feel like every time I tout this guy, things revert back to him being bad Rick Porcello, but we got to have short memories in DFS. He's having a really good second half. He's filling up the strike zone. He's actually missing some bats, which is a nice change for Porcello. And really, he's in the same boat as Scherzer in that the biggest fly in the ointment for him in the second half has been home run issues. You can note that by looking at his FIP compared to his xFIP and Sierra. FIP doesn't normalize home run rate, and it is over 4. His other marks are sitting around 3.5. But I do like Porcello against a Rays team that just isn't very good against right-handed pitching, considerably better against lefties. He is a slight favorite at home. And at $7,300, he allows you to do a lot with your bats. And the other name that I'm looking at is an even more of a shot in the dark, and it's not entirely about salary relief. It's also about matchup, and that's Brandon Finnegan at $6,000. The Cardinals are lost against left-handed pitchers. They strike out quite a bit. Finnegan has control issues, but one thing he has done at every level so far is strike batters out, and good stuff. If he can keep his walks in check, I don't think 6 innings of quality start baseball with a strikeout an inning is out of the question against this opponent. And at $6,000, that's plenty for what you're paying, basically.
Yeah, similar to John Lamb a few days ago, where he pitched well, pitched fairly deep, but the Reds will kind of take it easy on these guys. Obviously, that was their haul for Cueto. But I got another guy similarly priced, another lefty that I think flies under the radar. My dark horse of the night. That's Adam Conley against the Phillies. Coming off, I don't know offhand every start of his career, but there haven't been very many. Very impressive performance last time out. 30 points, 7 innings of 3 hit ball, 6 strikeouts against the Mets. That's a very good Mets offense now, one of the better ones in baseball over the second half. And facing off against the Phillies team that, as we know, is bad. They're in the bottom 5 in runs scored and home runs over the past 30 days, and striking out more than any other team, and by a pretty wide margin. Cubs are the only team that's close, 26.4% strikeout rate in the last 30 days. And if you look at what Adam Conley is doing, quietly 25% strikeout rate over the last 30 days, allowing just a 24.6% hard hit rate too. So even when he's given up contact, it hasn't been hard contact. So that's my dark horse. Maybe pair each of ours in a couple GPPs. I'm going to throw those guys out there because $2,100. It's all risk, of course, but you can load up on some big bats with those guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and outside of that, I should mention Corey Kluber is a guy that I've heard some people talking about. He only threw 61 pitches in his last start. I don't imagine he's going to be throwing many more than that. Certainly won't be coming near 100. I don't know why the Indians would take a big risk with him. So he's completely off my radar tonight, despite the fact that he's owned the Twins this season.
Yeah, unless Terry Francona comes out before the game and says that there are no pitch restrictions and he's going to be throwing 100 pitches tonight, I think you have to understand that Kluber's probably going to slowly be built back up to that 100-pitch count. They paid him. They extended him, and he has a long-term deal with them. It's not like he's a one-year rental or a guy that they're going to run into the ground. He's a huge piece of that franchise and one that's locked up for the long term. So even though they are kind of still in it, I would not expect them to push Corey Kluber too hard tonight.
Yeah, I don't either. All right, moving over here to catcher, where there are some good options. Top option, you and I both agree, Kyle Schwarber, $4,600. DraftKings also agrees because he's the most expensive. But he's got himself a great matchup tonight. And you expect the Cubs, they got a nice team total once again, facing another bad pitcher in Davies tonight who he's just been getting smashed recently. So, this is a team that obviously a lot to play for, close to locking up a playoff berth, and Kyle Schwarber's been, a revelation ever since the day that you saw him coming up and have been on him since day one.
Yeah, he's crushing right-handed pitching, and he gets a righty tonight. A righty that doesn't have overpowering stuff, so that's pretty much right in Kyle Schwarber's wheelhouse in terms of putting up a big score. A few other names that I'm looking at catcher. You have to look at Francisco Cervelli at Coors Field. He's going to be a popular play. He's priced under $4,000. Big team total, 5.5 for the Pirates. Got to like that. But you and I are in agreement that if you're not paying up, that the guy to go down to is the guy that you pretty much always go down to when he gets a righty, and that's John Jaso against Rick Porcello. It is at Fenway, so he gets a nice favorable park factor shift going from Tropicana Field being his home ballpark to playing at Fenway, which is a hitter-friendly venue. So I do like Jaso a bit tonight, too.
Yeah, a couple more guys we'll throw out there. If he's in the lineup, Tom Murphy. He's only $2,700 against Charlie Morton. Obviously, at Coors Field is the reason why you'd be targeting him. And then both the guys really in Rogers Center are GPP plays for me. Brian McCann, Russell Martin.
Yeah.
You got to throw both those guys in there. Nice big total there in Toronto. First base options. Anthony Rizzo is probably going to be a contrarian play, as you mentioned when we were talking earlier, due to his price and some other good options. He's 56. You got to like his upside, but he's very expensive. Other guys to consider. I'll go ahead and just go all the way down to the bottom. If you're not playing Adam Conley, who I just talked about, Darren Ruff against lefties has been absolutely incredible. Not just this year, but last year as well. $2,300 for him. If you got to have him in close to min salary play, that's easily the guy I'm going with if I'm not playing Conley.
Yeah, definitely. He hits for big power against left-handed pitching too, which is dreamy for GPPs basically. A few other names near the top. I failed to mention him in our pre-show conversation, but I know you're on board with a Joey Votto sighting. Joey Votto against Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn's just collapsed in the second half. His numbers are terrible. Votto is one of the few hitters in that Reds lineup that could take advantage of Lynn's monstrous struggles. Chris Davis, one of the few Baltimore bats that can take advantage of Max Scherzer's issues with the long ball, and he's a guy that I like in GPPs. He does have a lot of swing and miss, and Scherzer can certainly pile up the strikeouts. So this could be one of those 1-for-4, 3 strikeout home run performances from Chris Davis, but definitely have to have him on your radar in GPPs. And then beyond that, another cheap name that I like hiding in the outfield these days, Mike Napoli, $3,100, gets lefty Felix Dubron. He's just $3,100, and good matchup with DeBron, but do understand that he's probably going to be lifted for a defensive replacement. And then your chalk play at first base, Justin Morneau, $3,300, Coors Field. He's a lefty. Charlie Morton struggles with left-handed batters, and Coors Field, so you know what's going to happen with the ownership there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then two more GPP guys to throw out. Once again, a guy in Toronto, Greg Bird, been absolutely locked in, hitting for a ton of power right now. And then Adam Lind against Kyle Hendricks. Seen some love for Kyle Hendricks today as well, but he's been mediocre at absolute best recently, and allowing a 361 WOBA to left-handed batters. So if there's anyone in that terrible Milwaukee offense that I'm looking at, it's going to be Adam Lind against the righty. Second base options here, lots of guys, which is not the case at every position. We're looking here. I think that the guy we're looking at, or at least that I'm looking at, is my favorite play, Dustin Pedroia. Should be back in the lineup tonight. $4,400 against a lefty, and this is one of the best middle infielder hitters in all of baseball when he's healthy, and finally healthy again. This guy's been phenomenal since returning from his injury. And now he gets Drew Smyly, who, yes, he's pitched well, but still getting hit by right-handed batters, and that home run to fly ball ratio does not look particularly good for him tonight, especially in Boston. So Dustin Pedroia leads the way for me at second.
Yeah, I think he's your top play. Also got to like Neil Walker, again, heading back to Coors. Gets a righty. As a switch hitter, he's been much better against right-handed pitchers than lefties. Jason Kipnis against Phil Hughes, I think, is a bit of a contrarian play. Hughes has been bad this year. Jason Kipnis hammers right-handed pitching, gets to do so from the top of that Indians order. But because he's priced at the same price as Neil Walker and just $100 less than Pedroia, I think his ownership's going to be quite low. Guy that you and I both liked before the show, Daniel Murphy, second base and third base eligible. Williams Perez is lost against left-handed batters. Just gets basically puts it on a tee for them. And Murphy hitting from the heart of that hot, as you noted, Mets offense. So I like him. And Ben Zobrist at 39 looks like an interesting swerve. Again, a lot of good options at the position, so I could see Ben Zobrist slipping between the cracks. The switch hitting jack of all trades, basically. Zobrist limited to just second base and outfield eligible here on DraftKings, but you can pretty much stick anything next to him. The guy plays all over the place. Roenis Elias struggles with right-handed batters, and Zobrist has been especially good against lefties this year.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. I think he's a nice swerve off the chalk, like you said there. Third base, an option with a lot of power, but not a lot of other guys you feel great about. Obviously, Nolan Arenado left last night's game after hitting his forehead, so kind of like the toddler injury that those of us who are parents see all the time. But certainly, he's a guy that's in play if he's in the lineup. But as you mentioned, Charlie Morton very good against right-handed batters. So yes, it is Coors, but Nolan Arenado also very good against righties. So something's got to give there. I think you and I both prefer though either Josh Donaldson or Chris Bryant. I like Donaldson against Ivan Nova. Ivan Nova, last 30 days, he's got a 41.7% hard hit rate, 2.55 home runs per 9. He's getting absolutely smashed. And what better way to pick on Ivan Nova than the best power-hitting third baseman that we've seen in a very long time?
Yeah, and the probable AL MVP at this point. He's...
as he should be.
Yeah, he's been excellent this year. If I'm paying up at third base, that's where I'm going to do so. If I'm not quite feeling like a luxury item, I'm going to go down to $4,200 Adrian Beltre. Yep. He's locked and loaded of late. He gets a lefty. He's better against lefties than righties. Felix Dubron, not going to hold the platoon advantage against a right-handed batter, so all the favors working in Beltre's in Beltre's favor tonight. So I'm looking at him, but a guy that usually I would consider a shortstop that I actually like a little bit more at third base, I think, tonight, because there are some cheap options at shortstop. Xander Bogaerts at $4,000 is absolutely on fire and kills left-handed pitching and holds that platoon advantage over Drew Smiley tonight.
Yeah, I definitely like that. And then other options at third base. I mean, you can look for some values. I know Derek Dietrich's a guy that you really like. You mentioned him at $2,800. That's a great value play there against David Buchanan, who we know gives up tons of hard contact. And then the cheap Seager, the one who's actually been around and producing for more than 3 weeks. Kyle Seager, $2,000 less than his brother there. $3,500 against Ventura, who 8 hits allowed each of his last 3 games. Had that little, I can't call it a resurgence because it seemed like it lasted about an hour that he pitched well. But Ventura back to his old tricks of, serving up a ton of hard contact. And Kyle Seager's been really hot over the past week or so.
Yeah, and then at that same price point, if Aramis misses tonight's contest, Josh Harrison is the obvious beneficiary, $3,500. Assuming he hits in that top third of the lineup or one of the top 5 lineup spots, gotta like his price point against Bergman tonight.
Yep, absolutely. And then moving over to shortstop, it's got to be for me, and I think you agree, Francisco Lindor, $4,300 against flyball pitcher Phil Hughes. And Lindor, we just keep talking about how great this guy's been. He's been doing it all. He was the guy that was known for his defense, but coming up, he's hitting the ball for power. He's showing some speed and stealing some bases. $4,300 too, not a very prohibitive price tag, especially due to the fact that there's not a lot of middling options there. So, and Xander Bogaerts, who you mentioned, obviously has shortstop eligibility as well because he is a shortstop. Yep. And then the cheap guy, if I'm going to be going down to cheap, if you have to, Andres Blanco's $2,400. He's cheap. I mean, like I said, I do like Conley, and that's purely a punt play. Not that I particularly like Blanco, but he's cheap.
Yeah, another cheap name that you brought up before the show, Brandon Crawford, $3,100 is a good play against Andrew Kashner. Kashner really struggling with left-handed batters this year, and Crawford hitting for power against right-handed pitching this year. And a couple of the middle-tier options that I like, I don't love. Johnny Peralta against Finnegan, $3,500. Basically, he's a GPP-only play for me at this point. He's not hitting lefties consistently, but he's still hitting for power against lefties. So that's the type of recipe that you're looking for in GPPs. And then Elvis Andrews at $3,600. Again, I don't think that you need to necessarily roster him in cash games, but he's hitting of late. He's an average-ish hitter against left-handed pitching. But DeBron's not a good lefty, so I do like Andrews there at $36 just a bet.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving to the outfield, tons of options here as usual. If you're looking up, you got Bryce Harper's on fire, $5,700. Of course, he's your most expensive batter there, but rightfully so. Other options, Jose Bautista, mentioned all the hard contact given up by Ivan Nova. That's not going to work out too well for him at Coors Field tonight, so definitely give him a look. There's a lot of guys you could look at. You got Lorenzo Cain's got a lefty. You got Nelson Cruz against a struggling Rodano Ventura up there. Of course, Andrew McCutchen there as well, if you're paying up. Yep. Bergman's been very good against lefties. Not quite the case against righties, where he's been allowing a 4.15 WOBA. So if you want to get your pieces of the Pirates, right-handed bats like McCutchen, who happens to also be one of the best hitters in baseball, not a bad way to go in Coors Field.
Yeah, teammate Starling Marte, $4,800. Hard to argue with him. Reminder that Kyle Schwarber, even though he's our top play catcher, also outfield eligible. Mookie Betts against the lefty you have to like a little bit. Some other names that I'm looking at, it seems like their prices slipped through the cracks a little bit. Carlos Gonzalez at $4,100 against Charlie Morton. Teammate Corey Dickerson, just $3,200, is an even more egregious pricing error in my opinion. Two guys that are going to be highly owned. Guy that doesn't have a pricing error, but that I like a lot is Michael Conforto at $3,900. Williams Perez has been awful against lefties. Michael Conforto is crushing right-handed pitching, and I think his lower lineup spot is probably going to depress his ownership. So I do like him in GPPs quite a bit. Got to like his teammate leading off for the Metropolitans, Curtis Granderson at $4,300. Does a great job of getting on base, does still have some power in his bat. Not the stolen base threat he was of his early years, but everything else is there, and he's been hitting right-handed pitching very hard this year. And then in the bargain tier, I'll look at Jay Bruce just because of Lance Lynn's struggles in the second half. I mean, if he's going to continue to just throw up meatballs or just miss the strike zone, Jay Bruce is a guy that can at least make pitchers pay for their mistakes. And then Josh Reddick, one of the few lefty bats that I do like against Colby Lewis tonight. Has the power to punish Kobe Lewis's struggles with left-handed batters, so I'm going to give him a look as well.
Yeah, that's a great call there. And then as far as cheap guys go, one guy I mentioned, this is purely a price point play and the fact that he's a lefty. Sam Fold, $2,100. Tommy Pham's another guy who's been smashing the ball against Brandon Finnegan, who you mentioned. That's a fine option. But $3,700 Tommy Pham, especially if he gets a lineup spot in the top half of the order where he belongs and Johnny Peralta doesn't right now, then he's a good spot there. And then outside of that, I mean, there's a lot of decent values elsewhere. So for me, I mean, for the most part, I'm probably going to be paying up in the outfield. Also with, some solid middle options at pitcher. I think that going mid-range and up, Corey Dickerson and above in the outfield, probably a good way to go for you tonight.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree, definitely.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Lots of great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.